Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Kalika and you're gonna be a craftier person after watching this video. Can't work more than 20 hours? Okay, then you take my place or get fired. This happened about 7 months ago. I used to work as a front desk assistant at one of my university student housing. Our duty was to check the ID of every student that enters the building to make sure they actually live there. Yeah, the doors were equipped with the RFID system and they all had RFID enabled cards which they had to swipe before opening the door. I also had to make temp cards for those who locked themselves out and call the appropriate authorities in case someone passes out or the fire alarm rings and stuff like that. We had to work under a graduate community assistant, a GCD, who used to schedule us and approve our timesheets. The university policy regarding student employment was students weren't allowed to work more than 20 hours. Under certain conditions, the students could make it up to 25 hours, but the supervisor had to approve the timesheet. GCD used to change every few years. As they graduate, new graduate students would replace them. During my junior year, a new GCD was appointed in our building. We'll call her Ellen. She always used to try and boss over student employees. Everybody hated her. Let's fast forward a few months. I got a co-op offer on one of the reputed companies in my field for the next term in summer, so I emailed her the same day I got my offer letter saying I won't be able to work the next term. The next day I met her at work. She came over to my desk and asked whether it was paid co-op or unpaid. It was a paid co-op, and the pay was $8 more than her hourly pay. I subtly disclosed that she always used to be bossy over us. Boy oh boy, she really did make the rest of the term hell for me. Remember, I worked in that building for the last 2.5 years and knew all the residents on a first name basis, so I never had to check their ID card, but she made me check the card of every individual passing through the gate. Now comes the best part. The girl, Max, who was supposed to work after me, always used to come in late, so I had to stay on the desk until she came. If she was late for more than 15 minutes, I would put that half hour under my name. I was getting paid for that, so I didn't make it a big deal. Because of situations like these, we were only allowed to schedule for 20 hours max, but we can work for 25 hours max. At one time, she didn't show up for a shift at all, so I stayed throughout her shift. This caused my total hours to reach above 20. On the day of approving the timesheet, Ellen called me into her office and asked me why my hours exceeded 20. I explained what happened, and she started saying I wasn't allowed to work more than 20 and she can't approve my 2 hours above 20. Apparently I had to email her a day prior to working someone else's shift and it had to be approved. Cue MaliciousCompliance. Remember, front desk assistant was the first emergency responders, so it was emphasised in our training that the desk should never be left vacant, which is why I continued to work even after someone else didn't show up. After that day, if Max was more than 5 minutes late, I would call Ellen to look after the desk. She really wasn't happy about it, but that was the rule. She also couldn't fire Max as hiring another student worker and training them in the middle of a term would be troublesome. After a few times, Ellen stopped picking up my calls. I would wait until I made enough hours to make 20 that week and I would leave if Max wasn't there by that time. One day after I left, unfortunately or fortunately, someone burned their popcorn in the microwave and it triggered the fire alarm. The residents noticed there was no one at the front desk and they themselves called 911 and proceeded to evacuate the building. After a few moments, a few cop cars and 2 fire trucks reached the building. All this was happening and Ellen had no idea about it. The area coordinator reached the scene and managed everything. Firemen found the source and everything was cleared. The next day, I got an email from our area coordinator to meet him as I was the last person on the desk. As I reached there, along with the area coordinator, there was Ellen and another guy who seemed important. They started by saying how irresponsibly I acted. I got fired and the disciplinary charges that might follow. Then I began to explain everything to them. I started from that unapproved 2 hours and went along with how Ellen said to me I wasn't allowed to work for more than 20 hours. I even told them I called both Max and Ellen, but no one picked up the phone. I stayed 45 minutes after my shift ended. As I wasn't allowed to work more than that, I just left. The room went silent and Ellen turned red. They dismissed me and I was told I would get an email regarding the decision. Later that day, the area coordinator apologised for the misunderstanding over email and told me I can have my job back, but I declined. I was getting a co-op with good pay a few months later, so I decided to take my time off. Later I heard from my friends who were still working there that both Ellen and Max were fired and no one is scheduled for the 28 hours and the area coordinator had to cover that. I genuinely feel bad for the guy. I think OP handled that brilliantly. They basically tried to scapegoat them and pin the blame on them because Max didn't show up for his shift. And Ellen decided not to answer her phone. I'm glad Max and Ellen got fired, but they also lost a good worker too. Won't let me hang up? Fine, I'll enjoy the 5-hour call. This happened years ago. I've spent a large portion of my life working in call centres, or in positions adjacent to call centres. Early on, I was at one of the more classically toxic call centers, lots of micromanagement, no real channels to pass feedback up to decision makers, nothing really mattered except for the survey and KPIs, and which KPI was the priority change from week to week. There were issues with spotty agents hanging up really early in a call and claiming it was a disconnect, and similar avoidance, so management futzed with our phone system and made it literally impossible for any of us to actually hang up a call. If we got an abusive caller or a similar problem, we were supposed to let our team leads know, but the team leads never really did anything about the yellers or perverts. Because I turned up on time and didn't cause any problems, I got promoted into our second tier pretty quickly. You know, the people who you actually talk to when you demand a supervisor. My actual access didn't change, just broadened the scope of work I had to do a bit, which includes calling other businesses and customers from time to time while sorting out the problem. I quickly discovered that one of our vendors who I had to call regularly had the same lockdown that we had. I can't disconnect, they can't disconnect. Being, you know, someone with work ethic and initiative, I just used my task manager to force a disconnect so we could get back to work. But apparently that shows up in their tracking and I got yelled at because I'm not supposed to ever hang up on a customer. Next time I had to call that vendor, I told them that I wasn't allowed to force hang up anymore. Told my actual supervisor this call would probably go long because neither of us were allowed to hang up. He said he'd look into it and proceeded to do nothing. So, after wrapping up the problem, I chatted with the other agent for a bit and proceeded to work on homework for the rest of my shift. A hair over 5 hours. At the end of my shift, I transferred the call to the duty manager so I could clock out and go home. Only had to do that 3 or 4 more times before they adjusted the system to let tier 2 folk hang up. I had an amazing ready time ratio those weeks, though my handle times are crap. Got a lot of reading done too. Edit. Sorry, I forgot that KPI is even an acronym. It stands for Key Performance Indicator. It's basically the set of information that managers use to judge performance. It might be handle time, sales numbers, whether people are logged in on time, or other stuff. Imagine dealing with an abusive caller that you couldn't hang up on. That is one of the worst things to enable. I was always told in any call center I worked at that you couldn't hang up on customers without a solid reason. They would still monitor everything, and if a call ended quickly then they would just listen to the recording to see what happened. I would have loved a 5-hour shift of getting paid to read though. Not so handy landlord won't properly fix washing machine and dryer. About 20 years ago when I was dating the man I would later marry, he had an apartment that was a quad but wasn't surrounded by the best neighbours. It was sold, but he was kept on as a tenant by the new landlord. He wasn't a bad landlord per se, but he fancied himself a handyman, and he was cheap. So the washer and dryer included in the rental both break, and the landlord comes by to fix my boyfriend's setup. It works, but only temporarily, and they keep breaking, over and over again. It goes on for months. Boyfriend, who is a model tenant, finally complains lightly, saying that he's been going over to his mom's to do laundry, but sometimes he has to do it late, so he's been having to spend money at the laundromat. The landlord says that my boyfriend can bill him for the laundry, and the landlord will reimburse if things break down again and to make sure it's all documented by time, date and amount. Then the landlord says he's going to take a look at it right now, confident, somehow, in the skills that he hasn't shown. They broke again. I'm far less tolerant about these things, but my significant other doesn't like to be any trouble to anyone. Still, he's really tired of not being able to do laundry at his home, but thought it was really good of the landlord to offer to pay for his quarters at the laundromat. Bless his heart, and cue malicious compliance. This problem has gone on for 6 months, and I'm going to be solving it. I tell my boyfriend that I'll have to then keep track of the quarters he spends, by date, time and amount, and since there's no receipt, they might have to fight it out over the amount, and I just know he hates conflict. Plus, there's the time and gas he spends, which, while he could bill for it, any lawyer would argue that he would have spent time awaiting his laundry anyway at home. I tell him to send his laundry out for service because a service provides receipts. But won't that be expensive, he asks. I grin inwardly and say, it might be, but it's the only way to provide adequate documentation he's asking for. You can't prove what you spent at a laundromat, but you can with a laundry service. You'll include a copy of the bills with your rent and a note saying that you've subtracted the amount that it costs to do your laundry this month, as a washer and dryer has been included in the rental agreement and hasn't been working consistently properly for 6 months. Since there isn't documentation for the last 6 months, of course, we won't be retroactively billing him. Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll write the note, and I will be sure to thank him for providing this in lieu of it getting fixed. It is really nice of him. Okay, he says. That sounds good, but how do you even arrange for that? I know dry cleaning, but this is just laundry. I'll take care of the details. No problem, I reply. They charge by the pound and load, so I made sure to also include all the stuff he had put off washing since it wasn't a top priority. He'd only been doing the essentials for fear one or the other would break mid-cycle, and because he felt he was taking advantage of his mother. And boy, it really was expensive having a laundry service do all of his laundry. I arranged for regular pickup and drop-off that was convenient for my significant other. They even folded his underwear. The rent check he handed over was substantially lighter by more than $200, but all receipt copies did have the time, date and amount. Faced with the prospect of such a bill each month, the landlord scheduled an actual repairman to fix the machines one day after rent was handed over. Okay, so that's all for r/MaliciousCompliance. I really hope you did enjoy it. As always, if you do want to see more content like this, then please do subscribe. My Twitter, Discord and Patreon links are in the description, and any support is greatly appreciated. And as it's Sunday, I also want to say a massive thank you to my wonderful patrons. BackwardsDDog, Tyler Miller, Jen Burton, Jens Banning, Bo Walker, Princess Kate, Skyler A, Elizabeth Filmore, Stephen Arnowitt, and a lovely warm welcome to our new patron, who would like to remain anonymous, but they know who they are. Thank you all so much for your support. Mwah. That's for you, but keep it between us, okay? Thank you so much for watching.